Hello, and welcome back to another Talking Freight, brought to you by Ceresys, now part of Global Trans, the transportation management company. In the last episode, we talked about how shippers can gain the most efficiency by using a TMS with their inbound freight. Today, we continue our inbound freight series by focusing on how a TMS can help you with vendor compliance. As little as 4 years ago, shippers began to realize the problem with inbound freight operations. Prices were increasing, but almost 30% of shippers saw relatively no change in overall operations, which gave rise to an even bigger problem. Shippers were operating without real visibility into inbound logistics, and vendors had been aware of this fact for quite some time. Vendors and suppliers were taking advantage of shippers, resulting in higher inbound freight spend, which currently is approximately 40% of all freight spend for an average company. As more companies implemented an inbound freight routing guide, another problem arose. Many vendors and suppliers remain out of compliance, resulting in higher inbound freight costs. Fortunately, shippers have wised up to the issue and are leveraging TMS capabilities to ensure suppliers and vendors do not result in added charges. So let's talk about inbound logistics, TMS, and integration. First, let's talk about challenges of poor inbound freight vendor compliance. Many problems continue to impact shippers, and significant challenge exists in managing inbound freight vendor compliance. The average organization will spend $65 million on transportation and freight management each year, and these companies expect to handle more than 34,000 inbound shipments per month. Unfortunately, this has led to the worsening of the capacity crunch, resulting in higher inbound freight costs. Also, outbound freight costs are rising in tandem, resulting in even less money available for inbound spend. Instead of trying to put out endless fires, shippers are looking for more alternatives to implement these challenges, pushing and forcing vendors and suppliers into compliance. Unfortunately, some suppliers and vendors may be lost in the process, but another will always be available. Now, let's address how a TMS enhances inbound freight management. To eliminate all uncertainty with inbound freight vendor compliance, shippers are leveraging a transportation management system, or TMS, which provides real-time visibility into all transportation activities. Moreover, multiple shippers and suppliers using the same system can work together, not against each other, for proactive inbound freight management and for their overarching freight costs. It provides a win-win for both suppliers and shippers alike. Even carriers get in on the action, realizing better planning for load management and much more, which will have a resounding effect on customer service levels, which are expanding today. Deploying a TMS offers real benefits for all parties using, which may include reduced freight costs, improve supply chain KPIs, allowing for continuous improvement, better resource use, including labor planning, decrease order-to-case cycle time, better inventory management, reducing carrying costs and unnecessary overstock, enhance shipper-carrier relationships, increasing eligibility for shipper of choice status. Now that we know the value of a TMS, let's talk about best practices in using a TMS to enforce business rules for shippers. Even though the use of a TMS is the best practice to follow, it helps to have a few additional tips to ensure you maximize the return on your investment. Integrate your TMS with all systems. Integration ensures that all systems rely on the data and produce verifiable insights. Get carriers and suppliers to use the same system as your organization. When all parties involved in your supply chain use the same system, collaboration and communication increases, reducing inbound freight management hassle. Deploy sensors to gain real-time visibility into shipment status. Deploying sensors that can track real-time data will further enhance the capability of your TMS. Track vendor and supplier compliance with the inbound freight routing guide. You can't manage what you can't measure, and the TMS provides a means of tracking and holding vendors' feet to the fire for compliance with your standards within the inbound freight routing guide. Diversify carrier relationships. Adding additional carriers to your operation could increase competition among those you use, offering extra leverage in renegotiating carrier contracts or shipping in the first place. Use a TMS that offers reporting capability. Alone, a TMS is useless, but its reporting capabilities can help shippers and carriers make informed decisions and avoid unnecessary expenses. Let an expert manage inbound freight. Complex issues will arise, but shippers should work with an expert to manage complex inbound freight issues. Remember reverse logistics. The final tip is simple and complex. Shippers must remember the role of reverse logistics in managing inbound freight. Everyone will return something at some point. It's best to understand your inbound reverse logistics processes just as much as it is to recognize those coming from your suppliers. So what can shippers do? Deploy your TMS now. Every moment lost waiting to deploy your TMS represents missed opportunities for savings and even increases in your freight spend. Let go of these added costs by deploying and implementing your TMS now. If you're unsure of which TMS to use, the Ceresys Raider is an excellent way to gain complete control in both inbound and outbound freight. Well, that's it for this week's Talking Freight. Thank you again for joining us for another episode.